unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
Have you noticed an increase in the usage of the words empath and empathy lately, within the last couple of years, especially in the last year? We've heard that word all our lives. When I was young, I used to get confused. What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? And I'd have to look up the word every time. But now, I think it's the yin to the yang of narcissism, and that's why I'm doing this podcast after my narcissism podcast of yesterday. Seem to be two opposites ends. That guy's a narcissist and I'm an empath. Weird accusation. Seems to be ironic. Doesn't seem like an empath would call somebody else a narcissist. Seems more reasonable that a narcissist would call somebody an empath than an empath calling somebody a narcissist. Because an actual empath would feel the feelings, the insecurities of the so-called narcissist. And then they would probably hold their tongue because they know that saying mean things to people makes them feel bad. And the idea that you're an empath means that you probably don't want to make people feel bad. Or is it? I don't know. That's a stupid assumption. Why should I say that? Maybe empathy is knowing how somebody else feels, but it doesn't mean how you treat somebody, right? Why don't we just read the definition of empathy right now, just for a refresher. It's fun to do that, right? I'm going to go with the Wikipedia entry. I haven't read it yet. I looked it up and had it ready. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. That is, the capacity to place oneself in another's position. Definitions of empathy encompass a broad range of emotional states. Types of empathy include cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and somatic empathy. Oh, great. I'm going to have to look up the word somatic. But let's just go back now. So we've got different kinds of empathy. I don't usually concern myself with the different kinds, do you? Probably because I'm not very empathetic. But the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. The capacity to feel what another person is feeling. Of course, they don't actually think we believe that other people can actually feel what they're feeling. I think what they mean is that we can imagine, because of our own experience, we can see facial expressions and body language, and we can say, ooh, I've felt that way too. Or that person looks to be feeling the way I feel. We're not actually feeling their feelings because we're not psychic. And that person could be acting, literally. How often do you cry in a movie where the person is literally doing a job and becoming emotional and pretending to be a certain character in a certain situation? Oftentimes they are employing their own empathy with a character to be able to channel emotions or to fake cry. Of course, we've all met people who can cry at the drop of a hat with feeling nothing. Are those people empaths? Are they sociopaths? How do you trust a good actor? How do you trust somebody who can make you feel a certain way with their facial expressions or their words or their story about what happened to them? And suddenly you, being an empath, you being a human being and having had your own experience can somehow imagine that that experience is similar to your own. Does anybody have the capacity to actually feel the feelings of somebody else? I don't think so, because we can't get into their body and get your mind out of the gutter here. You can't crawl into somebody's body and actually take their experience for a drive. But what we can do is recognize ourselves and our own experiences in another. And we use visual cues to do that. Again, body language, facial expressions, tears, words, stories. And all of it has to be filtered through our own experience. So oftentimes, some people will say, well, you can't really be empathetic because you don't know what that person is going through. And I guess that's the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Sympathy is the idea that you understand how they feel because you've been through the exact same thing, right? Is that what it is? Should I look that up? Should I look up sympathy, or should we just leave it at that? Maybe we'll look at the etymology of the word. The English word empathy is derived from ancient Greek. The word, there's a Greek word, I don't know those, it's Greek to me. Empathia, meaning physical affection or passion. This in turn comes from this little squiggly EV looking thing, in, at. Pathos, passion or suffering. The term was adapted by Hermann Lotze and Robert Vischer to create the German word Einfühlung, feeling into, which was translated by Edward B. Titchener into the English word empathy. However, in modern Greek, that Greek word means, depending on context, prejudice, malevolence, malice, and hatred. Interesting. So the etymology of the word isn't really how we're using it at all. We're using it a completely different way. I'm an empath. You're malevolent. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier. If you drill down into things, we see that they're not usually as they are. I'm an empath. When people say that, I'm an empath, meaning I cry when you cry. I feel your pain. I understand you. I don't know. Do they? A lot of these empaths seem to be projecting a fictional pain onto others. A lot of times it's strangely classist. You'll find a very rich person who is well-to-do, lives in a safe neighborhood, and they will say that they care about children in cages because they are an empath. They can see the suffering. But then, of course, they get beyond the kids in cages. That's pretty simple, right? Every person seems to... I can't imagine a person, besides maybe a few real fucked up people that end up in prison and behind bars, that look at a crying child and have no feeling. But of course there are mothers that look at crying children every day and think, shut the fuck up. I know you're faking it. You're manipulating me and you're trying to get your way, and that's why you're pouring on the tears without very many tears. Does a real empath know the difference between acting and manipulation and somebody who's really in distress? Does a real empath go around talking about being an empath? I don't know. Seems weird. Seems like an empath might... this is a strange assumption I probably shouldn't make, but seems like an empath and humility might come together. They might go together. They might run alongside, because if you really understand another person's feelings and you understand their suffering, it seems like that might have a humbling effect on you, right? Maybe you might end up being less likely to accuse people of terrible things, being an empath and all, being able to understand why that narcissist acts the way they act. Wouldn't an empath be able to look at a narcissist and go, God, that behavior is probably a big, thick coating of armor to protect their gushy insides, their vulnerabilities. Maybe an empath would understand that, and not try to exacerbate the problem. Or maybe they would. Like we say with the etymology of the word, it seems that empathy is fine. You can detect when somebody's miserable and then maybe make them more miserable because you understand how people work. Maybe an empath is the best at manipulating somebody. Maybe a person who really understands and is able to feel somebody else's emotional state from their frame of reference, maybe they can become the grandest manipulator of them all. Remember how I'm thinking about Barbara Walters all of a sudden. Is she a real empath? Is that why she can make her guests cry? Is that how she knows that asking personal questions about childhood and relationships with dead parents and siblings brings the emotion out in people? Is she an empath, or is she a narcissist that did it all for ratings? Are the women on The View, are they all empaths? Is that why half of them think half the country are Nazis and that Donald Trump is evil? Because they have empathy and they can understand? Or maybe they can. Maybe they can. Maybe they know very well how to manipulate people. They understand how sadness and vulnerability work, and they can easily tap into that.
Merkley, it seems like you're just trying to take the word empath and turn it into something diabolical. Yeah. Is this some kind of opposite day shit? Are you trying to redefine the word? Listen, I'm really comfortable with the idea of empathy being a good thing. It's Christ-like, it's Jesus-like. Now, why are you trying to turn that on its head? I don't see any reason to take the word empath or empathy and try to put a dark spin onto it. What's your problem? You some kind of contrarian? You playing devil's advocate here?
Yep, you got me. That's what I'm doing. And is it because I'm a narcissist, or is it because I'm empathetic? Who knows? I think I know. I think it's because I always feel like I want to defend people. And I think it's because it's not that hard to be empathetic, and I kind of assume almost everyone, is an empath. I think that's why we like pets and animals, because we see even in them the same facial expressions. Well, that puppy's happy, and it's happy to see me, and that's good. Or that puppy doesn't like me. Fuck that dog. Why doesn't that dog like me? Well, I just want to pet it. Goddamn dog. Come over here, let me pet you. Don't you know I need to pet a dog? You goddamn narcissistic dog. So, yeah, empathy it doesn't mean, I don't think, maybe you're with me on this, maybe you're not, But I think most people are using the word without considering the full spectrum of what it really means. I think they're using it in a way to just say, I am nice. I am holy. And more these days, it seems like more times than not, that self-definition comes attached to saying, therefore, I am qualified to say that Donald Trump is a terrible person and anybody who voted for him is a terrible person and they don't have empathy. Is that how that word's being used lately? That's what it seems like to me. But, I'm an idiot. I'm a total dum-dum. That's why I named my dog Dum-Dum. You know where I'm going with this? What do you think? Are you able to feel how I feel? I'm able to feel how you're feeling right now, I think. I think you're a little bit frustrated with this conversation. I would be. I am. Because it's just fun to have teams. It's fun to just be on a team and say, my team's the best team. God damn it, I'm an empath and you're a narcissist. I'm good, you're bad. I don't have any elements of narcissism within me. I'm only empathetic. I'm like Jesus, you're like Satan. End of story. Shut up. While I go over here and pretend to pat this little Mexican child on the head without even knowing Spanish, because I know the language of love. The language of love is me. Watch me. Kids in cages. We all feel that way. That's what I think empathy is. I mean, but maybe I've bastardized. We just read the definitions, didn't we? We could delve into it further if we want to, Let's read some more, shall we? Definitions. Empathy definitions encompass a broad range of emotional states, including caring for other people and having a desire to help them. Experiencing emotions that match another person's emotions, discerning what another person is thinking or feeling, and making less distinct the differences between the self and the other. I like that. That's what I was talking about. It can also be understood as having the separateness of defining oneself and another a blur. I like that one. I don't know where I start and you stop. Where do you stop and I begin? We're one love. I think that's a fair definition. I think we all feel that way. But that kind of nukes, it kind of throws a stick of dynamite onto the way many people are using the word empath today, doesn't it? I think the way I'm defining it closer matches that, where you see yourself in others. Where you, instead of looking at Donald Trump and saying that's a demon, you say, I relate with that guy. I got a stupid hairdo. I'm insecure about my skin tone. I think I look better with a tan. I don't take my suits to the tailor. I wear it off the rack. I'm not in great shape. A lot of people don't like me. I'm human. Rather than, that guy's a monster. He's a Nazi. He hates everybody. He's a racist. He hates women. He hates everybody. I know this because I'm an empath. God damn it. That's why I know. I don't think you know what empath means. I think an empath looks at a prisoner in a cell who has done something terrible, maybe even confess to it, something unspeakable, something terrible. I think an empath is able to go, something bad must have happened to that person too. What would have landed them there? I see the sadness on that person's face, and I've felt sadness before. Something bad happened. I think an empath takes pity on people. I don't like the word pity. We'll do a whole thing on pity too. How about that? Not on this one. But I think an empath is able to recognize the whole spectrum of things in others, not just the sadness, but also maybe the evil in others. They're able to go, ooh, I've had, you can see somebody that's suicidal and think, ooh, I don't want to mention this to anybody, but I've had those dark thoughts too. Or in a murderer, you didn't murder anybody, and they did, but I've had those dark thoughts. I wished death upon somebody in my mind. I didn't tell anybody about it. But gosh, it would be great if that ex-girlfriend was dead for cheating on me. Can't reveal those thoughts. Doesn't an empath maybe have that ability to see the darkness in others too? And so maybe that's where a lot of these empaths are coming from right now, these so-called self-defined empaths. Maybe when they say Donald Trump is evil and he's terrible and his supporters are Nazis, maybe they're saying that because they actually do see all of the things they're projecting onto others and themselves. Maybe they're really just saying, I know exactly who they are and how they are because it takes one to know one. I am everything I'm accusing them of being. And I'm hoping you don't notice. I'm hoping my misdirection will stick. I'm hoping that I point my finger over that way, you look that way, you light your tiki torch and you sharpen your pitchfork and you go running in that direction, and I'll sit over here and not reap the results, the consequences of being exactly how I've defined someone else. Maybe that is what they mean when they say I'm an empath, and that's why I know. Do you think any of them have thought it through that well? How many of them? How many of them have thought it through to that level? How many people think things through at all? Thinking things through takes time. It takes effort to think things through all the way, to dig down into an idea or a term and figure out what it really means. I'm learning a little bit by talking out loud. Maybe you are too. I don't know. Let's continue. It is also the ability to feel and share another person's emotions. Okay, we got that. Some believe that empathy involves the ability to match another person's emotion, while others believe that empathy involves being tender-hearted towards another person. Oh, you see, there's the debate. There's a debate on empathy. Some believe that you can match another person's emotions. In other words, mimic or mirror them. That sounds kind of shady to me. And others think that it involves being tender-hearted. We've covered both of those things, right? Matching a person's emotions seems natural, but if it's an actual, if you put effort into doing it, doesn't it seem a little creepy? A little bit, Having empathy, I'm reading now, having empathy can include having the understanding that there are many factors that go into decision-making and cognitive thought processes. Past experiences have an influence on the decision-making of today. think we covered that. Understanding this allows a person to have empathy for individuals who sometimes make illogical decisions to a problem that most individuals would respond with an obvious response. Broken homes, childhood trauma, lack of parenting, and many other factors can influence the connections in the brain which a person uses to make decisions in the future. I think we went over that. I'm so good at goddamn empathy, I know what's going to be in the Wikipedia article before I read it. Right? So are you. You know this. So I think we're clear here. I think we're clear that empathy is it's an interesting theory. I think most of us believe it's true, because I think for the most part it is true, because I think we are way more similar than we are different. All of us. From one extreme to the other. You know? I'll just use a couple of really terrible examples here, but let's use Mother Teresa, Adolf Hitler. And I'm assuming you haven't dug into both of their histories like I have. But I will just say, yes, very similar people. Very similar. Much more in common than different. And I think that's an empathetic way of looking at the world. And I think it's demonstrably true. I think it's absolutely true. You and I have much more in common with each other, even if you hate my guts, than I have in common with a tree, or you have in common with a chicken. We're definitely much more on the same team, you and I, mortal enemies, than a sea anemone, I'm going to have to use that too, and a fruit bat. Yep, we got more in common. Our empathy can help us understand that. Our empathy isn't something we use. I don't think we're supposed to, by the definition of the word. I don't think it means that empathy is what helps us define and identify enemies who need to be expunged, expelled, and exterminated. I don't think that is the whole idea behind being an empath. I think we learned something here. I learned something here. I learned that I understood the word empathy a little bit more than I thought. You probably did too. Wait. Hold on. What? I'm feeling something here. I'm feeling something. I'm feeling how you're feeling. You're unsatisfied with my Hitler, Mother Teresa connection. You don't like that I compared them. I'm feeling that. I understand how you feel. It's a frustrating comparison, because Mother Teresa has been heralded as this wonderful woman who sits around suffering children and lets them die. Doesn't help them. Not with the billions of dollars that the Catholic Church has. She doesn't help them. She just watches them suffer. Interesting. Yeah. And Hitler, well, he's the most evil person ever. Wait, I'm still going with it? Wait, you're still upset that I'm going with the comparison, right? Okay, well, let me compound, because I feel your frustration, and I feel like you maybe want me to frustrate you even more. So I'm going to do that. Because I often hear, let's just stick with this for a bit. Since Hitler's so much in the news, and he's never really left the news, and he's even more now because Trump is literally Hitler, his reincarnation. But he's used so often. He's the modern day secular Satan, That's what he is. Let's just accept that, right? He's the modern day monster. He's the go-to. He is the devil incarnate. People often ask, well,
Surely you could feel empathy for Hitler. There's no way. You do, man. I'm telling you, you're walking on thin ice, buddy. Thin ice. I mean, what would you do if you went back in time and met Hitler? I know what I would do. I would take him out of his crib and I'd bash his head on the sidewalk. He'd be dead. 'Cause I'm an empath. I will kill an infant baby to save the Jews.
Boy, that's impressive. That's an impressive act of bravery for you and your time machine. I'm impressed. You would snatch the infant baby Hitler out of his crib and bash his head on the sidewalk. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because it's the right thing to do. You have one chance.
Yeah, Eminem mentioned that. So, what about going back to Hitler in his early days as a toddler? What about hugging him? What about hugging him? Is that an option?
You can't say that. You cannot say to hug Adolf Hitler.
Oh boy, I'm not cut out for impersonations. I can though. I can say that. What about taking little Adolf out of his crib, hugging him, and showing him some empathy early on? Is there a chance? Is there a chance? A chance that Hitler would not have become Hitler if people would have showed him actual empathy? You know, I don't know about his parents. I don't remember. I read up on Hitler and read Mein Kampf and read all those things when I was younger. Just get inside of his brain. He seemed like a screwed up kind of a guy who was well intentioned and everything went haywire, you know, as good intentions often do. Maybe more often than not, good intentions end badly, you know. But yeah, I want wonder what would have happened if people would have really liked his paintings, you know. If they would have said, "Man, Adolf, you're a really good painter. These aren't half bad. I mean, they need a little work, but they're pretty goddamn good. Would you like to do an art show?" Suddenly Hitler's off rubbing elbows with the other artists instead of exterminating a portion of the population he's determined are an enemy to his ideals. So yeah, you didn't maybe don't pull the baby Hitler out of the crib and bash its brains onto the sidewalk. Maybe go back in time and give old little Adolf Hitler a big old hug. Maybe bounce him on your knee, make him giggle. You know, help him draw funny pictures. Maybe what if Adolf Hitler, when he was young, learned how to laugh? What if he learned how to have a good sense of humor? What if he took his art skills and became a cartoonist instead of the leader of the Third Reich? Is it possible? Is it possible for you to imagine showing some empathy for young old Adolf Hitler? And how about even the people who ended up following him? You know, with all the big things. Can you show any empathy for them? Can you figure out and understand why that they were able to go along with the plan? You know, because they were busy and they had other things to do and popular things happen. I don't know. Now I'm treading into forbidden territory. I understand. This is the reason why people are banned. You know, I've already given so many little clips that you could take out of context and turn me into a monster. Wouldn't be very empathetic of you to do that, now would it? I think that most people that claim to be empaths are not at all interested in the actual definition of the word. I think there are a lot of charlatans out there. And most often charlatans self-profess to not be charlatans. They profess to be helpful. and wonderful and nice and filled with love. What do you think? Is that too negative? Is that too negative? Don't be negative. You don't need to. Be happy. This is just a podcast. You know, if you see a little evil child, give him a hug. See what you can do to fix him. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know. I don't understand your skill set. Thanks for listening.